service in Europe to give away all its data. So it's used a lot in apps and other things too. So it's a bit fun to work with. 2 years ago we started using React and Node. I work on the mobile website. So since 2014 it's been a universal app using React on the server. I'm no React expert or Node expert, but I have a little bit of experience with it now. We do about, our traffic is very seasonal, but we do about 1.2 million page renders a day, I guess, in high season. So we have some traffic to work with, and I've been trying to look at React on the server and how we can do it properly. First, some questions to get out of the way. Should I write my API on the server with React? No, don't do that. Should I write my front end in React? Probably do that. Should I write my middle end in React? Now, middle end is a term I just learned. I think it's really nice. This is not the data backend. This is the backend that renders our HTML. This is what we mostly talk about when we talk about universal or isomorphic apps. It's the middle end. It's just serving HTML. You have an API that handles all the data. So the answer to that is maybe. Maybe you should be doing that in React. But first, why server rendering in the first place? Why not just do everything on the client? If anyone of you were at NodeConf this summer, I presented my crap metaphor, and it's basically cacheable, resilient, accessible, and progressive. All these things are really important for server. For the client, this is the user experience point of view. Cacheability is important for everything. It's the speed. It improves resiliency, of course. If there's an error in your JavaScript from the client, it's going to have something to fall back to. And accessibility, you can support older clients, older browsers. And progressive, you can just add features. Those old browsers can have one thing, and then we can just add more logic on top. Now, why would I want to render on the server with React? Because you can. Not all frameworks or component libraries let you do this. It's a bit more now, but a couple years ago you couldn't do it in Angular, you couldn't do it in Ember. But React has always been, from the start, something you could use on the server. And that's been really important. I think it's played a small part in its popularity, I think, over the last couple of years. And because it's easy. It's basically render to string. We just get a big blob of HTML, and we just send it down the pipe, and it arrives at our browsers, and we can bootstrap from that point on, and things just run in the client. And because it's kind of a nice metaphor, you have data in, UI out. It's basically a function. So this is kind of a really neat way to think about our UIs, and it makes it easy to wrap our heads around how everything works. But why wouldn't I want to render on the server with React? And this is the stuff I want to talk about mostly. The biggest problem, of course, is it's slow. React is easy. It's a nice metaphor, but it's also a blocking function that basically takes a long time to render. And we know that Node is a single-threaded process. So every time you call render to string, it's going to stop your process from accepting any new requests, for example. So if you have a high-traffic site, you're going to have to wait until you finish rendering before you can process the next request. So this is a big problem. It's kind of a flaw in the design, but the problem is that it wasn't designed to run on the server. It was Instagram wanted to use it, so they added it to the React library. Facebook has never ever used server-side React. So this is kind of a conundrum because it's nice to work with, but at the same time it's a bit of a beast in terms of performance. This is this is a graph from EID. A bit hard to see, but this is axis is in milliseconds. This is 50 milliseconds here, and this is 100 the next line. There are two different pages. So you can see that basically our node process is blocking for at least 50 milliseconds, and sometimes more. So that means no request can be processed until this is finished. So that's a bit of a concern. It's hard, of course, to compare to like a standard templating engine, because there's lots of logic and stuff. These are not logicless templates that we're rendering, but it's I would expect that this page should be able to render in maybe 10 milliseconds if it was in traditional templating language. Now, disclaimer, I stole this next part of the presentation. Sasha Aiken in February presented this really great talk at a meetup in San Francisco called Speed Up Your React Server with these 6 weird tricks. And he did all these benchmarks. So I'm going to do sort of the same kind of setup here. Okay, so first benchmark, this is our baseline benchmark. We're going to just run a really crazy, back here. So this is a really silly component. Basically, we give it a breadth and a depth. We're going to just generate a massive tree of DOM nodes. We're just testing the raw render speeds. We need to give React something to chew on. So this is going to create a big, big tree. It's got 11 children wide times 4 down, so it's going to recursively generate this tree. Otherwise, the only content is just going to be, I'm just generating a random word just to pretend I'm doing some sort of logic to generate content here. But otherwise, it's just a regular, this is out of the box React. And at the bottom here, you can't see because the plant, which is rendering to string this component here. So we'll just run that. This is our baseline test. And we're going to do several more and just keep iterating on this concept and see if we can improve our speed. Okay, 986 milliseconds. So I'm using benchmark.js, so it's doing several loops. That's why it's taking a long time. And it's giving me a standard deviation. So this is our baseline. So React out of the box, render this huge DOM tree. It's going to take about a second. Now, what can we do to improve that score? So the first big trick, which is not really a trick, this is something you should be doing anyway for all your stuff, is Node.env production. You need to run your application in production mode. It's super important. So the only thing I'm doing here is the first line. I'm just forcing. You wouldn't do it this way in real life. You would send it in as an environment variable, but you can do it this way. Because env is actually writable. It's not just readable. So that's the only change. Now, I've got some awesome EID umbrellas here. These are high quality, storm tested. So I want you guys to try and guess how fast this one fix is going to make this this benchmark. So guys, just yell it out.
130.
600.
Remember what you.
430.
Okay, remember what you remember your score. No cheating. The guy or girl who gets it closest gets the new umbrella.
430.
Everyone has picked their. Here we go.
Come on. Come on. Keep on going. Keep on going. 800.
Oh!
That was quick.
334. Did anyone get close to 334? Honestly? No. We'll give out the umbrellas later. Node, if you look at, basically Node is 2 packages, React, React.js, and there's React DOM. These are the 2 main libraries that you're using for when you're using React. There's actually 500 and something Node.env references in both those code blocks. So basically, Node is looking up all these values, and they're doing lots of debugging stuff. So it's basically if Node.env is not production, we're going to do all this. That's all your nice debugging when you're working in React. You have all these errors and all that stuff. If you do not set production, Node.env to production, you're going to still run all that code. So that's actually a huge performance penalty if you don't look after that. So always use production. Next trick is using stateless components. So there's you can use stateless functions. This is, I don't remember when they released this in React, but basically instead of extending component or using create class, you just have a function called render, and you return your JSX or whatever it is. In this case, we're using JS, but it's just a function. So render is just a function. It's not a component. It doesn't have any, on the server you don't need the lifecycle methods because they don't get called anyway. So here we're just using just a plain function. So place your bets, everybody. We've got really good
Is this
umbrellas.
production plus?
Yes, this is all these steps are iterative. So the goal is to get as fast as possible. Now we're on step 2.
270.
150.
64.
50. 270.
All right, I'm pressing a button. Bets closed. This is for stateless components plus production. It was only a little change. Oh, sorry. Usually it's about 50 milliseconds here. I guess the pizzas are a bit warm, so I'm having that thermal. We were talking about thermal issues with phones. This is happening to my computer now. All right. So next, bundled and minified. So bundle and minify React and React DOM. Does it sound crazy? So I can't really show you that, but I made a bundled version of React with both those libraries together. React does have a dist. If you install React with npm, there's a dist folder, and they have minified versions. You can't actually use them together. They made a mistake. It's designed for working in the browser. So they use a window.react to hook them up. So you can't use it on the server, which is a bit silly. So I made my own and did some more efficient bundling. So let's see what happens. Now, bets, everybody. So now we're at 330-ish.
100,000. 270.
290.
150.
Okay, 150, okay. Bets closed. We are running.
Can you scroll?
Yeah. Oh! That is insane.
Wow.
When I saw this freaked me out because this shouldn't happen. And there's actually an issue on Facebook talking about this because they made this mistake. When they moved everything to React DOM, they broke this thing that you couldn't use the minified bundles that they ship. And they basically said, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't be, there's no need on the server to be minifying and bundling your code. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, this is this is the biggest thing you could do. So back to this same image we had before. So I just wanted to just let you know what exactly is happening here. So this is a production build. This uses stateless components. And this used Facebook's React min, but not the React DOM minified. Just the React, the dist that they sent. So on Monday, I pushed a new version. So if you see the difference there. So this is a huge, like in terms of production code, this is a massive speed boost. So this uses and I'm not really sure why this is better. Obviously all those Node M we saw, like the 500 of them, you've inlined the value of production, and then you're running it through a minifier. That's going to be dead code removal. So all that stuff, that those if production or not production, that's all going to be just removed from your code base. I'm also doing kind of like what Rollup does, where everything is in one scope. So there's no all the requires are inlined. So I think there's like 70, 80 files in React. So all that stuff is going to be just one big flat file. I'm not sure exactly what of that is helping here, but in any case, it's a massive, massive improvement. Okay, next is what if we actually don't use React at all, and we use Preact. Now Preact is like relatively new. It's kind of a subset of React, or I'm not really sure exactly what the API is very similar. They say that they don't have to support all the same browsers and stuff, but it's super small. It's very efficient. It looks really quite nice. So on the server, they have a render to string library here. So you're just swapping out React and the React DOM libraries. And we're using those instead. So, bets, everybody?
75.
30.
So we're 150.
I'm tonight.
Okay, that's closed.
Oh, hey, I got it. Umbrella.
Man with an umbrella. So this again is quite impressive actually. Now that we're getting lower and lower here. So this is yeah. I really wanted to be able to show you guys a nice production graph of things with React, but I didn't quite make it. But next week I'm hoping to ship change to React. It's a bit more refactoring on the client side. On the server side, everything works great, but on the client side, things work a bit differently. But I encourage people to look at it. I don't know if it's kind of a silly thing to say at a React meetup, but the node person in me says, more performance, please. I need more speed. What else can you do? So you can avoid or maybe inline these React create elements. So every JSX tag compiles down to a create element call. So Babel has two plugins you can use. One is called React constant elements, and that's basically, it's going to analyze the JSX. If it's basically a static, there's no, you're not passing props, it's just like a static node. It's going to pull it out of your render function and just basically refer to a variable instead. And this plugin transform React inline elements. I actually forgotten what that one does. Anyway, use both of them. Babel's going to try to optimize it for you. In the case of our awesome demo here, it didn't do anything because we're just random generating stuff. There's also a really couple of crazy projects. One Walmart has started doing, and it's basically take your tree of React stuff and render it to a handlebars template with tokens. Yeah, so this is what they do, and they basically patch React to do this. So they basically, you have to, as long as you require this library before everything else, it's going to patch Node's require function, and it's going to wrap one of the React libraries so that it is going to, and you have to set up, this is quite complicated cache you have to set up, but you can cache with different keys, and you can specify which kind of key you want to use, and it'll also tokenize, and yeah, it'll either cache the string that's returned, or you can generate a template in this kind of style of handlebars. They swear by it. They said they've, over 100 times speed improvement for doing this. So it kind of depends on your content, of course. And there's also a framework called React Server, and that's basically, they patched React as well to allow streaming. So that's what we really want. For the server, you'd want a streaming renderer where you can do things in chunks. Render to string is just a blocking huge function call. If it was a stream, we could, doesn't matter how long it takes, that's not so important, is that you could send some stuff and receive requests at the same time. So that's what we're ideally looking for, but yeah, we don't have it just yet. So yeah, it wasn't quite so easy as it sort of sounded at first. Yeah, is there a hope? Well, some of you might have heard that React is rewriting React, or Facebook is rewriting React, this Fiber project. It's a huge, basically the internals of React are being rewritten, and I think maybe there's like 1 or 2 people in the world who actually know how it works. They're re-implementing a JS stack in, yeah, it sounds really crazy. Is Fiber ready yet? There's no internet connection.
I guess no.
It's not. The answer is no. They're like 95% there, they say, but they don't even know. There are massive resources that are being put into this, but they don't know if it's going to work. And what it is, it's going to be, they wanted to make it a bit more like React Native. So they want to be able to do layout, and they want to be able to render children before they can render parents, and they want to be able to do priority, where they can say things that are off view, we're not going to render now, we're going to render them later. I want to render stuff that's animating. So it's basically making it more asynchronous. And they think that this may help for server-side as well. But Facebook doesn't use server-side rendering, so yeah, we don't really know. Someone else is going to have to write a streaming renderer. The joke was that this doesn't exist. There is no is server-side React ready yet.com because it's not really ready yet. So, advice from a guy with a great beard. Run in production mode. Prefer stateless components. Bundle and minimize your React and React DOM. And of course, for me now, I'm asking myself, do I need to do that for everything? Should I start minifying Express? So I'm going to start doing more experiments with this. I think it's pretty interesting because I haven't heard anyone really doing that.
Isn't it because of V8's like large function de-op?
It could be, yeah. It could be de-oping that way, the inline smaller functions. That could be, yeah. Once you dead code remove lots of if statements, then maybe that also helps. So it's, yeah, it would be good to run this through the new inspect and do some profiling. Use your Babel stuff. Maybe do that caching stuff if you think it works for your content. I couldn't get it to quite work, but switch to Preact maybe. And then this is more controversial. Basically, I think if performance is important, you have lots of traffic, then maybe you should treat, just like in the old days, treat React as the V in MVC. Do less things in React. So that's no React router, no async data fetching in your React tree. I think at this point, at least for us, we want to just do as little as possible in React. That's the only way we can get around this problem. Yeah, so that's routing and yeah. And basically, that's it. Questions? Yes.
Have you run into any really difficult bugs because of React server-side rendering?
No, I think the only tricky thing is that bootstrapping process. If you want to sort of be able to seamlessly go from a rendered HTML and make it interactive, because if you've ever tried it, sometimes React will throw out errors that you're after, because basically what it does is you have to send your data as a big JSON blob along with the rest of your HTML, and you send that into your React on the client, and if for some reason, as React is rendering, it finds a mismatch between, it's trying to resolve between the HTML that's sent down from the server and the HTML that's being created. So if there's an error there, there's a mismatch because of, if you're relying on a screen size or anything like that, which you don't know on the server, then you'll get an error and it'll be de-optimized, and then it'll start re-rendering everything from scratch, and that's going to be a big hiccup performance. Because you want to be able to say, you want to duplicate the state on the server the first time you're running in the client. So we do like a two-pass render phase where it's basically, you set like a bootstrap prop true on your props for the first time, so that everything is kind of, if you know that something's going to change, you just make sure that it's indefinite, it stays the same as it was on the server. And then we re-render again, just the parts that need to be sort of customized for the client. But as far as bugs, no, it hasn't been anything serious.
In terms of performance, I mean, your site is pretty special since it's not very cacheable on an edge cache.
Yeah, we have a 1 hour, so the forecast updates every hour, or at least most of it. Now we have a 7-minute for some parts of it, so that's all fetched. But we have basically a 7-minute cache time. We use Akamai, but it's so we want to put as much as we can on the edge. In the summertime, we have about 9 million unique users a week over the whole world, like literally North Korea, other places. South Africa is is like the top 6 or something. Yeah.
But I mean, a normal site.
A normal site, you probably
wouldn't have these problems.
No.
Yeah.
But this is like the Vegas and the Finns. And,
yeah.
But I think it's important anyway for user experience. You want to get that HTML to your users as fast as possible.
Yeah, but in that case, you would have a cached.
If you can cache it, caching is king.
Yeah.
And of course now we launched a service worker in June or July, and that's really changed the whole thing now. Now it's like shit, I don't really need server-side rendering so much because now I got a server in the browser. So now you're really splitting. Like we tried to, my colleague Evan's back there, he worked a bit on making, he had worked in the Nokia N95, make it look nice. So we have that spectrum on one end, and then we have the latest Chrome on the other. So it's kind of hard to, we do everything in one code base. So we tried to cover it all. So it makes it a bit tricky that way, but it is a bit special.
So what you're saying is we shouldn't use React on the server side, we should use
Well, I
service
think-
workers instead?
Definitely use service workers,
Yeah.
and definitely server-side render. You need to do both,
Yeah.
I think.
But just comment to your, like the problem with the window dependency, you can probably fix that with, like in Webpack you have an imports folder, so you can say that window React equals React.
Yeah.
And it also does the tree shaking, which is probably removing all those conditionals. So
But you're still, I mean, then you're building, again, because most people do not minify and bundle their server
Right.
code. I mean, that's one of the nice things. Like we've used ES6, everything that Node supports, we just that's as much ES6 as we use, just so we don't have to, compile for the server, 'cause it's just nice that way. You have nice stack traces and everything else. So now we're saying, how do I set up my folders I gotta generate everything, and it's just a big pain in the ass. But I mean, if it makes it such a huge difference, then I guess that's what we have to do.
I think the guy who made who did the talk that you based your talk on.
Session, yeah.
He had something called a React server stream.
Yeah, that was it's been used in that Redfin. He used to work at Redfin.
Yeah,
This one
okay,
here, Redfin
everything.
React
Yeah,
server.
that's the Red.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Yes.
is that alive anymore? Or?
No, because he had to actually patch. He had a fork of React, and he had to patch it. And then before the summer in May, he started a pull request on Facebook's React project to start doing this stuff. And they were supportive, but then they started Fiverr, and then basically dropped it. So now it's just dead. So because it's not a priority for them, and React is really inefficient for server side. It does a lot of stuff that you don't need. So unfortunately, we're waiting for Fiverr.
How many node processors do you have to run in parallel to have?
We have 12 instances. There's small Docker. Yeah, so those graphs are from a small Docker instance that runs in Azure, in Mesos. So it's not, these aren't huge machines. I think they're A1s or something. So they're quite small. So we could definitely help, that would definitely help. I guess Node would like to be on the, a 6 gigahertz single core machine if it existed. That would cost a lot of money if it does. Anybody else? So who won an umbrella? I think you, Mr. 99.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Any others? No cheating?
150, man.
150? Okay.
100.
I think I did pretty well.
Did you?
She's lying.
She has to live with it then. Her guilty conscience. But yeah, any other questions? Come see me. I'll be hanging around a bit as long as there's more beer.
There's still some more beer and pizza, so if you want to stay around for a bit, then feel free to come with us. That's what we're
Okay, so you're working for Mac or? Okay, because we start
Yes. Blir de sluppet noe sted?
Legger det på YouTube. Men det blir sånn semi-ok.
Med link i meetupen. Jeg har lagt det på... Det ligger i comment.
No, they're open because they just released a new one.
Yeah, they do it like they would like to just, we work with like Beth and I and together.
Yeah, because
Follow us for their professionals.
I know, but it's
Hello!
even you know, but they don't have the details.
Halla! Hva skjer da? Oi, sorry.
Jeg tar hva skal jeg gjøre?